we're going on our trip. Going to do some presentation, talk about economics, business analysis, and more importantly, how these business owners are going to grow given all the economic conditions. We'll see you there.
Let's go, Edmonton. We're ready for you.
Well, we're here to speak to the Canadian Movers Association. I'm talking about the economy. They've got some big concerns in their association, from regulation to government interference to a whole bunch of economic concerns, inflation, labor shortages. So we're going to have a great conversation about what are their biggest concerns, how they want to see the government get involved, what can they do in their own businesses, and of course, I've got so much research I can share with them on how to help their businesses grow from where they are today.
Today's session, I'd like to kind of talk about, we are at a unique situation today. One of the key questions that were asked of you is what's your biggest concerns in your business in that survey, and without a shadow of a doubt, majority of you selected the economy. Now, in the economy, this is not a typical recovery that we've seen in history. When you look at what happened in the pandemic and where we are today, there are many businesses, many individuals who had to just change their entire lives because of this. And we look at, I call COVID is the gift that keeps on giving. It gives us problem after problem after problem. And whether we're shut down or we have to change the way we do business, we have to bring in different technologies, like what Andrew was saying. I think that there's a lot of issues that come up, but the big concern is, are we out of the woods? And the question that I keep on asking our economists, members of central banks around the world, and the answer is no. We're not out of this. I have seen in other industries competitors sharing the job to make sure that that employee has a full 40-hour work week or more. We're changing the way we're doing business. Hybrid working is one way. I have seen businesses include Netflix because the price went up as a benefit. That's interesting. Satellite radio in the vehicles for Uber drivers. Think about that. That's interesting. So we have to become more creative. And that's where I think business owners and you in the room have already identified that there's going to be some changes in here. Now, we've got extreme variances because of the pandemic. And we're going to see these variances, meaning there are a lot of people who've been pushed out of the job market because of the pandemic that are all going to be coming back over time. And now we're going to see what the federal government in Canada is going to do. And what they generally tend to do is open up the doors for immigration. They have promised at least 250,000 per year for the next 5 years. That's their way of filling the gap. That doesn't solve the problem. That's the opportunity to fill the gap. So we have to become more aware of where our audience or where our employees are going to come from. So there's opportunity. So I think, how do we get those newly arrived Canadians to see value in this industry? That is an opportunity. And I think working with the association, working with government, and literally putting your neck out and saying, we're here to hire. Now, I look at some of the biggest concerns that business owners like yourselves are mentioning to me, and inflation being one of them. And generally speaking, when I mentioned about stimulus generally is an inflationary piece. I walked in and I saw the beautiful spread of food, and I saw pasta. And when I have that in front of me, I'm like, I'm gonna fall asleep. What do you want to make sure that we get out of this presentation? Inflation expectation, recession, perfect, housing trends.
Bonds versus equity.
Bonds versus, we're gonna get in the investment side, all right.
Should I retire?
Oh, now you're going to my wheelhouse. Should everybody retire? The answer is yes. When is the magic question? Generally in the economy, this sounds so depressing, I know. We should serve alcohol at every economic event. Just pass out alcohol So it's easier for them to digest this stuff. It's not fun. Every time I say recession, you take a shot. Yeah. Pretty soon people want a recession. My industry in the financial management, I can tell you in this room, there are people who say, my job is not worth it as a money manager. And I'm seeing smiles out of the corner of my eye, and they're nodding yes. And I totally get it, because people can do it themselves. Sound familiar? People can get into a group and they can help each other out. Sound familiar? Anybody can put up a sign saying that they're a financial advisor. Sound familiar? In the perception of value, price will only be determined if they don't see the value in it. And so my job in my industry is to show value. I have to listen to my customer, understand what they want. It's the same thing happening here. But I'm going to be all things to some people and all things to all people. And I think that as an industry, we all have to shift our minds to. Let's focus on the Canadian government. You fast forward 18 months since the beginning of the pandemic in Canada, and the provincial governments are cutting checks, reducing prices, doing whatever they can do to help their citizens. All this is inflationary. And what the Bank of Canada thought was that inflation would be under control by the mid-level of 2023. We do not see that happening. And control means 2% growth on inflation, just so we're all on the same page. We do not see that happening. We're seeing it push now to 2024. Part of the reason, supply chain. Part of the reason, stimulus. Part of the reason is that our businesses still haven't come back to pre-pandemic levels. And so they still need to build. When I'm managing clients' money, we have to put some sort of forecast together of how the economic outlook will be so we can invest their retirement money. In that situation, what I look at is when do we start seeing the trough of these types of issues in businesses. And I look at publicly traded companies around the world saying, when are we seeing a trough happening here? In the models that we're seeing, it's late 2023. So in your business planning, be prepared that this might be 12 to 13 months out before you see the trough, not the recovery, the trough. Does that kind of make sense? That we're not anticipating 2023 to be a great rebound. It's not a V-shaped recovery where everything comes back up to normal pre-pandemic levels, everybody's happy. Just be prepared in your business a bit longer term. It's not going to be a V-shaped recovery. That was one message I definitely wanted to say to all of you, because I hear too many businesses out there saying, we'll be fine next year. Everything's great. Look, they've opened up. Have they? Be careful of how that recovery is, especially in business planning, because it's going to be expense holding right now with revenue generation coming up later on. You may have to raise prices. There are going to be peers in your industry that are just not going to make it. What we find very interesting is the definition of value. Now, to move your goods from one location to the other, that's the value. That's the cost. And what we haven't seen across the country is the definition of good value in a move. This is a third person's point of view, and only a third person's point of view. We have not been able to articulate to the public, me, your customer, of what good value is in a move. So if one price is 20% higher than the other, what am I going to go for? The only value I see is price. Value is the perception of price. So I think in this industry, when I did my research and I looked across the country, is how do you determine a good value? It's based on what the customer's looking for. What are they looking for? Number one, of course, get my stuff across to the other place and without any damages. I got that. But how do we differentiate from our competition? This is what your barriers to entry you can create in your industry, is trying to understand and explain to the public what value is for the dollar. Then we're not competing on price as much, we're competing on the perception of value. How do you understand or explain to the customer what the value is if they're moving every 3, 4, 5 years? Great point. I say flip it. Are we listening to our customers to understand what they need every 3, 4, 5 years so we can show value? And so my job in my industry is to show value. I have to listen to my customer, understand what they want. It's the same thing happening here. One message I really want to put out there is it's not just what's going wrong, it's where the opportunities that we can make things go right. And I think that's where this association and all of you in the room can really take this industry to the next level. I look forward to seeing the stories going forward, and thank you for having me.
I thought the overall presentation went pretty good. I like the fact that there was a lot more interaction from these owners and businesses. I think that they really have a good handle of what's going right and what's going wrong. And they're not the only ones that are concerned about labor and the economy and inflation. So they're looking at ways to control that, but it's going to take some time. And I think they understand that, and they're going to put that as part of their business plan for 2023. I was impressed with the fact that that engagement came in, that they were willing to talk about some of their concerns, some of their opportunities. And I like when there's people who see both sides of it, either that the glass is half empty or half full. No matter which way you look at it, there's still a glass that we have to deal with. So I think that was really, really nice to have that engagement.
Thank you for watching the Karmali Exchange. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can also follow me on social media at Faisal Karmali, where we can continue the business conversation.